I, Derrick Sanders, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. I took that oath on October 4th, 1990, swearing to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Although my enlistment had an end of service date, that oath has no expiration date. That oath is still in full effect as I stand here today. Since that date, I have taken many other oaths, swore to tell the truth in a court of law, and although every single one of those were very important, I held true to those oaths. This oath, which I proudly spoke out loud almost 30 years ago, is still the fabric which keeps my heart filled with military pride. Immediately following my oath, I woke up the next morning, wrapped up in an itchy green wool blanket after my first night in the United States Army. I'm sure I thought, how did I get myself in this mess? Looking back over the thousands of push-ups, which I don't believe was an exaggeration, dual combat deployments, other small non-combat deployments, and all the friends I've made along the way, I am so thankful for that very first day of what 28 years later would have become the foundation of my life, professionally, personally, and everything in between. As the years blend in together, it seems as if all has been good. However, I know there have been many pitfalls, mistakes, heartbreaks in between. It is that very military service experience that taught me to stand back up after falling down, wipe the dirt off, and continue on with my head held high, despite the pain or discomfort the fall may have inflicted. Considering all that, somehow that first day in an itchy green wool blanket has brought me here today. A current deputy sheriff at the Clark County Sheriff's Office of 15 years and a former military police corps veteran of almost 5 years, standing in a high school auditorium, honored to be among so many military veterans who came before me, served with me, and served after me, swelling with pride, knowing there are so many young people who are sitting in front of me today, some of which will one day recite this very oath. Today is not about me. It is about us as a nation and the men and women who have served to protect it. I will briefly explain my path, simply so you know who it is up here speaking and from what authority and experience my words come from. As a 20-year-old man, I made the decision to enter the United States Army at the very moment the first Gulf War was ramping up with Desert Shield. After months of watching the prelude to the war build up, I felt the need to enlist. With just a few short weeks from that decision, I was introduced to my faithful, itchy wool green blanket. Immediately after my basic and advanced military training in the Military Police Corps, our entire training unit was sent as a group to the Desert Storm combat area in Saudi Arabia. Our closest friends said our goodbyes as we were divvied up in country to the serving units who needed additional resources. I was attached to the 16th Military Police Brigade and started my first missions as a fresh military police soldier. Those duties started immediately, and conducting operations with the great influx of enemy prisoners of war at a mobile hospital was my welcoming ceremony. As a fresh and admittedly scared new recruit, the horrors of war were immediate and at times haunting. My experiences were different than most others. My experience was seeing the devastation our highly trained and mighty military inflicted on the enemy. Hourly, I would be reminded how precise and effective my fellow veterans were when they were conducting their missions. The wounded prisoners of war were delivered to our temporary hospital and needed military police security to be transported to larger trauma center hospitals. Without much more detail, I can attest that our veterans were and are very effective in their mission of being the most well-trained and precise force in the world. Beyond that, I can also say that our nation, at least in the area I worked and the veterans I worked with, showed their true professionalism, heart, and empathy. Each prisoner of war in our care was treated with dignity and respect and given what appeared to be the best medical care available. I say this simply because it highlights the service our veterans provided. We protected our nation and did it with honor. We did it without pride in the devastation, but with pride in the mission. We did it without pride in the fact that it was necessary, but with pride in the fact that we were able to respond quickly and do so as the mightiest force in the world. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because service members, like every veteran sitting in this auditorium today, stood up when it was time and recited an oath that meant more than just words. That oath was a blank check. That oath meant everything our hearts could muster. Every single word in that oath we were sure of. What we were unsure of was what that oath would cost us. What that oath would cost our family, our community, and above all, if that oath was the last oath we would ever be able to recite. I am fortunate enough to be standing here today and speaking of my oath. However, as I do, myself and every other veteran in this room can feel that oath bursting within us, as we also feel the pain for those that gave their lives in support of that oath. Our veterans do not ask for your pity. Our veterans do not ask for your power. Our veterans do not ask for your presence. Our veterans do ask for your remembrance. We ask this so that each of us remember and appreciate what it has taken to make this nation great. We do this so that future generations know when they recite that oath and spend their very first night with an itchy green wool blanket, that their nation stands behind them. Their nation is proud of them, and their nation needs them. Millions upon millions have recited this oath, or something similar, before me. Many more millions will recite it after me. In our nation's history, an estimated 50 to 60 million men and women have served in the U.S. military. There are about 20 million veterans alive today, representing less than about 7% of the U.S. population. Today's serving military represents less than 1% of our current population. I have a personal message which I am directing to that 1%. You are what stands between us and tyranny. I want you to know there are another 20 million of us veterans who have saddled up before you. However, we have not stopped supporting you. We will continue to support you and each other in any capacity we can. I want every single person to know that using our veteran code, as we would many times say, I got your six. Or in other words, I will always have your back. We are very aware that how we treat our current service members can greatly influence the future of our military. Many currently serving members do so because they watched how previous generations were treated. Future generations are watching you right now, and your actions will help them decide when and if they choose to recite their own oath and serve our country. I have had 2 children recite that oath. Although the decision was theirs, I can be sure my actions helped them make their decision. Every veteran sitting in this audience today has a family, most of whom are very proud of our service. We have a community which, by your very presence here today, solidifies your support for the veterans of this nation. As we honor our veterans, we must also honor those of you who support them in countless ways. I personally write to new service members during their basic training. Others support their own ways. I encourage everyone, veteran or not, to support your military in whatever way you can. Our 1% is counting on you. And another 20 million veterans are hoping every day you understand their sacrifice and commitment has sometimes came at a heavy price. That heavy price may be affecting many of those 20 million people. We cannot ever forget the military members who never got the chance to come back to an auditorium on a day like today. They gave everything they had to offer for you, for me, and for everyone that will come after us. To honor their sacrifice, we need to take care of and protect their families in their absence. It's the least we would expect of their communities and nation. There are millions who did not return, there are millions who did return and struggle physically, mentally, or both, each day because of that service. We cannot forget their service nor ignore their struggle. We need them to know their service for us was not in vain. They are not alone in their daily struggle, and we need to ensure that no veteran suffers alone. They must know that we are here to help in whatever capacity we can, and that they will allow. While we served, we built a bond with those next to us that we serve with every day. We also built a bond with those that served elsewhere in the world and we have never met. There are veterans in this auditorium whom I have never met. Yet we still share a common bond, one which can never be taken from us. It is that bond that builds and tightens this nation's veterans. Printed on every American coin is the Latin 13 traditional U.S. motto, a phrase which certainly was not put there because of veterans. However, when you look at our veteran community and the support we have given this country, and will continue to give it, it is very fitting. E pluribus unum, which simply means out of many, one. Every time you see an American coin, you can remember that out of the many veterans, we have continued to keep this nation one of the mightiest and one of the best. I ask that each of you remember a veteran in your own way, every day, not just on Veterans Day. Every time you see an American coin, remember, out of many, one. In 25 years, I am certain, one of you high school students sitting here before me today will be standing on this very stage, recalling your very first night wrapped in an itchy wool green blanket. Thank you to the United States military, all my friends, many who I still communicate with today, and everyone between